90% of you will die. The rest will wish you had. General K.R.R.Vak's voice echoed through the steel halls of the Imperial Military Academy, the kind of voice that made cadets' spines lock up straight, except for one human sitting cross-legged on the floor, peeling an orange. The alien recruits towered over him, insectoids with serrated mandibles, scaled warriors with glinting armor, methane breathers and sealed tanks. They all stared at the human like he was a lost civilian who had wandered into a death tournament. The final survival examination. The Empire's pride. The most brutal test in the galaxy. And today, for the first time in history, it had an exchange student from Earth. Steve casually tossed an orange slice into his mouth. So, quick question. This final exam, do we get graded on a curve, or? Several cadets hissed in disbelief. One actually dropped his plasma rifle. General K.R.R.Vak's four eyes narrowed. Human. You will not survive the first phase. Steve grinned. Cool. I'll make it a group project then. The aliens thought it was a joke. Humans had a reputation for being chaotic, sure, but this was the Imperial Academy. The exam was designed to kill 90% of cadets, by design. The survivors became officers. The dead became a statistic. The gates to the training zones slid open with a low rumble. Beyond lay a city-sized labyrinth, collapsing buildings, automated gun turrets, predator drones, bioengineered war beasts. Somewhere inside, hidden caches of supplies and extraction points waited, if you could survive long enough to reach them. Commence, the general barked. Aliens surged forward, weapons drawn. Steve didn't move. He just watched them run into the chaos, then pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. It was a crudely drawn map with circles and arrows. The nearest alien recruit, a crystalline species called VRYNN, paused. What is that? Battle plan, Steve said, tucking the map into the VRYNN's claw. Congratulations, you're team leader now. Team leader, the VRYNN stammered. Yeah, Steve said, jogging after him. Rule 1 of human group projects, find the smartest person and make them do most of the work. 20 minutes later, the alien teams were already thinning. Predator drones shredded a squad of reptilians. A methane breather's suit ruptured in an acid trap. Screams echoed from the upper levels of the labyrinth. Meanwhile, Steve's group was bizarrely intact. That was because Steve wasn't fighting the course, he was hacking it. Literally. He'd found a maintenance hatch, jury-rigged a portable screen from scrap, and started poking at the labyrinth's control systems. One by one, turrets powered down. Predator drones began wandering aimlessly. Even the war beasts paused in confusion. How are you doing this? Hissed the VRYNN leader, watching as a sealed door slid open, revealing untouched food supplies. Steve shrugged. Back home, this would be called speed-running the game. On the observation deck, General K.R.R.Vak frowned. The survival rate was wrong. No cadets from Steve's vicinity had died yet. In fact, they were thriving. Alien instructors muttered nervously. The exam's AI combat director flashed error messages. Patch the system, one technician urged. They tried. Steve noticed. And then Steve laughed. Oh, you're patching live? Amateur move. He input a few more commands. Suddenly, every hostile drone in the sector turned, on the other cadet teams. Screams erupted across the labyrinth as chaos unfolded. By the 2-hour mark, Steve's team had cleared more objectives than any in Academy history. They'd also collected enough food to hold a small banquet, which Steve insisted on mid-exam. Humans always eat before the final boss fight, he explained to his bewildered alien teammates. General K.R.R.Vak slammed a claw on the control console. This is not a feast, this is a combat trial. It's both now, Steve said into a nearby surveillance drone, holding up a sandwich. We call it multitasking. But Steve's sabotage didn't just trip the exam's AI. It tripped something bigger. Hidden behind the Academy's training program was a shadow protocol. The labyrinth was directly linked to an actual Imperial defense grid simulation, one that the Empire used to train its real war fleets. Steve's hacks were bleeding into that system. Drones and turrets in the exam were mirroring commands in the live defense network. Somewhere in orbit, automated frigates were suddenly rerouting. Empire fleet officers began seeing bizarre orders scrolling across their command screens. Form dance circle at coordinates. Broadcast Rick Astley on all channels. Fleet morale equals critical. Recommend sending pizza. By the time the Academy realized what was happening, it was too late. The defense grid simulation had gone live. Real ships. Real weapons. Real commanders now thought they were under coordinated attack from an Earthling in a school exam. General Krarvax stared at the chaos unfolding on the monitors. "Who, is this human?" Steve smiled into the surveillance drone. "Name's Steve. And I just made your final exam, the opening round." Fade to black. Sirens screamed across the Academy as if someone had set fire to the entire Empire. On the main tactical display, the simulated labyrinth vanished, replaced by an orbital war map. Red blips, Imperial warships, swarmed like angry hornets. "Attention all stations. This is not a drill. Unauthorized fleet movements detected." The Academy's loudspeakers boomed across every hall. In the labyrinth, Steve was leaning against a barricade, sipping from a cup of something purple and fizzy. "Hey, Krarvax? You might want to answer your phone." The general's voice came back, tight and furious. "You've compromised the Imperial defense grid. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Steve shrugged. "I dunno. Made it a group project, but, like, galaxy-sized." Up in orbit, Fleet Admiral Vroth was having the worst day of his career. His flagship, the Iron Oath, had just received a direct order to form the Millennium Falcon shape in formation. Another fleet had been told to initiate tactical disco mode. And every ship in the outer perimeter had their targeting systems replaced with a game of Tetris. "What kind of enemy is this?" Vroth roared. One junior officer cleared his throat. "Sir, it's, a human." In the Academy exam. The bridge went dead silent. Back in the labyrinth, Steve's alien teammates were beginning to catch on to his style. The VRYNN crystal being had jury-rigged a comms link to the hijacked fleet. A tusked reptilian cadet was distributing armor plating from disabled drones. Even the shy methane breather was grinning inside his fogged-up helmet. Steve pointed at the map. "Okay, so here's the plan. We're gonna use their live-fire fleets as our distraction. While the big scary ships are chasing ghosts, we finish the exam in record time. Win-win." The VRYNN hesitated. "But, isn't that war?" Steve smirked. "Only if they realize it before I'm done." The first retaliation came fast. Empire Command activated Override Protocol Theta, a last resort system that locked down the labyrinth and released the Omega units. They were hulking mechs, each the size of a gunship, bristling with plasma cannons. Designed for planetary sieges, they were now stomping towards Steve's position. "Ah, boss fight time," Steve muttered, tossing aside his drink. "Team, grab the shiny stuff." Instead of engaging directly, Steve had them scatter and collect reflective scrap metal. They duct-taped it to walls, ceilings, even the backs of the mechs themselves. Within minutes, the Omega units' targeting lasers were bouncing wildly, hitting each other, frying their own control nodes, and in one case vaporizing the floor beneath them. From the observation deck, alien instructors watched in disbelief. "Is this a human combat doctrine?" one whispered. "No," another said hollowly. "It's chaos magic." Meanwhile, the fleet situation was going from bad to worse. Every ship linked to the defense grid was now synced to Steve's ridiculous commands. At one point, an entire carrier group was ordered to fly in a spiral and release all decoy flares at once, creating a glowing, galaxy-visible smiley face. Millions were watching the live stream. Across the Empire, civilians cheered, laughed, or stared in horrified fascination as the mighty war machine of the galaxy danced to the whims of one bored human in an exam. General Krarvac tried to reassert control. "All cadets, listen to me. This test is hereby terminated. I repeat." Steve cut in on the same channel. "Hey guys, just so you know, termination of the exam means no one passes. You really want to explain to your superiors that the first human ever beat your kill test and outscored your record holders?" The alien recruits froze. Even the general's jaw twitched. Pride was a dangerous thing in the Empire. Steve grinned. "Thought so. Let's keep playing." By the 5th hour, Steve's group had cleared every major objective. The Labyrinth's AI had crashed completely, leaving only Steve's custom command interface running. Omega units? Offline. Predator drones? Reassigned to play tag with each other. Enemy cadet teams? Either merged with Steve's group or hiding behind him like frightened interns. The real warships in orbit had devolved into a bizarre theater of maneuvers, half of them dueling by slinging cargo containers at each other like dodgeballs. The alien instructors held an emergency council. "This must be stopped before the Emperor himself notices," one hissed. Too late. The central holodisplay flickered, and the Emperor's face appeared. His golden headdress shimmered with the light of distant suns, his expression a mix of regal fury and deep confusion. "What," he said slowly, "is happening to my fleet?" Every instructor pointed, literally pointed, at the one human on the screen. The Emperor squinted. "Send him to me." Steve looked up at the hovering surveillance drone. "Cool. Do I still get my grade?" On the observation deck, General Krarvac covered his face with one claw. This wasn't just an exam anymore. This was now the opening act of something the galaxy had never seen before, and the human hadn't even broken a sweat. Steve stood, stretching like a man who'd just finished a lazy afternoon puzzle. "All right," he said to his team. "Field trip time. Let's go meet the boss." The Imperial throne room was built to intimidate. Titanium columns stretched 100 meters high, banners of conquered worlds hung in the stale air, and a floor polished so perfectly you could see the reflection of your own impending doom. The Emperor sat on his obsidian throne, flanked by guards in black armor. His eyes, 4 of them, locked onto the small, unarmored human walking casually across the floor as if he'd just been called into a meeting about office snacks. Steve gave a lazy salute. "Yo! You wanted to see me?" A ripple of outrage moved through the court. No one addressed the Emperor like that. The Emperor leaned forward, voice like a glacier grinding over rock. "You have seized control of my defense grid. You have humiliated my academy. You have turned my fleets into a circus." Steve grinned. "Thanks, I'll take that as a compliment." In the shadows, the alien generals whispered urgently. "We must execute him instantly." "No. If we kill him, we admit he beat us. Then, what do we do?" Steve cleared his throat. "While you're all deciding, quick question, you guys ever heard of the Mandela effect?" The Emperor blinked. "The what?" "Oh, nothing," Steve said, producing a small device from his pocket. "Just something that'll make you question your own memory forever." He clicked it. A ripple of sound, almost too low to hear, rolled through the chamber. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even threatening. But every alien in the room froze. The device was a human creation called the Resonator. It didn't destroy ships or kill enemies. It simply changed tiny sensory details in people's perception, the shade of a banner, the pitch of a voice, the taste of the air, until their brains started second-guessing everything they knew. A guard looked at his weapon and swore it had just been a different color. A general turned to his aide and asked why his uniform suddenly had 5 medals instead of 4. The Emperor looked down at his own hands, and for a split second, they didn't look like his hands at all. "Make it stop," the Emperor ordered, his voice trembling for the first time in years. Steve slipped the resonator back into his pocket. "Sure. Just one condition." In orbit, the situation was unraveling fast. Fleet crews were now reporting that their navigation charts had shifted, as if planets were in slightly different places than they remembered. Some captains swore they'd never seen the star system they were currently in. Morale was fracturing. Command discipline was evaporating. Steve's hack was bad enough. The resonator made it existential. The Emperor rose from his throne. "You seek to negotiate?" Steve shrugged. "Not really. I'm just here to point out that if you keep fighting me, I can make every single person in your empire start arguing about whether your flag has 3 stripes or 4. Forever. You think political unity's hard now? Wait till your Senate starts fistfights over the color of the sun." One general barked, "This is psychological warfare." Steve winked. "Exactly." Meanwhile, in the Academy labyrinth far below, the alien cadets who had joined Steve's group project were now broadcasting live from the war zone. They wore scavenged armor decorated with absurd human symbols, smiley faces, pizza slices, and ducks wearing sunglasses. They were winning hearts across the galaxy, alien civilians tuning in to see the meme militia as they called themselves. The Empire's propaganda channels tried to suppress it, and failed. The more they censored, the more the footage spread. The Emperor paced, claws clicking on the perfect floor. "You could destabilize the entire Imperial Order with this resonator." Steve pulled a second, smaller device from his pocket and tossed it casually in the air. "Buddy, that's the backup." Gasps filled the chamber. The Emperor knew the truth. He could order Steve's execution right now, but it wouldn't stop the chaos. The fleets were already compromised, the Academy humiliated, and now the population entertained by the whole thing. Kill the human, and he becomes a martyr. Let him live, in. Steve broke the silence. "Tell you what. Let me and my crew pass the exam with full honors, give us a ride home, and I'll turn your fleets back to normal. No more resonator games." The Emperor's lower eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse?" Steve smiled. "Then tomorrow morning, half your governors wake up believing their capital cities are somewhere else. And the other half will agree with them." In orbit, an entire battlecruiser group suddenly stopped moving. Their crews had unanimously decided they were in the wrong galaxy. The Emperor's claws tightened on his thrown arms. "You are a dangerous creature, human." "Yeah," Steve said cheerfully. "And this was just my final exam. Imagine what I'd do for extra credit." The court erupted into whispers. Generals argued in hushed tones. The Emperor sat still for a long moment, then finally spoke. "Very well. You will have your victory. But when you leave this palace, the truce ends." Steve shrugged. "Sure. But by the time I leave, your people might not want to fight me anymore." The Emperor tilted his head. "And why is that?" Steve tapped the resonator in his pocket and winked. "Guess you'll have to remember it differently." Outside the palace, the galaxy's news feeds lit up with the headline. "Human exchange student negotiates with Emperor in middle of exam." Millions more tuned in. And somewhere in the Imperial fleet, a captain was trying to remember whether the Empire's anthem had always been a sea shanty. Fade to black. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. From orbit, the Imperial fleets were a spectacle of confusion, capital ships spinning in spirals, destroyers firing their weapons at empty space, frigates attempting to dodge holographic projections of themselves. Every officer on every bridge was questioning their own reality. And in the middle of it all, on the Emperor's throne world, Steve walked through the palace halls with the calm confidence of someone taking a Sunday stroll through a park. His alien cadet team trailed behind him, carrying scavenged weapons, duct-taped drones, and more snack food than was strictly necessary. He stepped into the main broadcast chamber. Thousands of holographic screens flickered to life, showing the Empire's fleets, the trembling Emperor, and every shocked general across the galaxy. Steve leaned casually on the central console, crossed one leg over the other. "Ladies, gents, and intergalactic warlords," he began, voice calm, almost bored. "I just finished my final exam. And I'm passing, with honors. The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. You dare? Steve raised a hand. Relax. I'm offering you a deal. Leave your fleets alone, stop pretending you have control, and everyone walks away. Or, he tapped the resonator again, sending a pulse across every command interface in the galaxy. Or what? The Emperor growled, claws gripping the armrests. Or, Steve said with a grin, I turn every single person in your empire into a debating meme about whether their capital city is on the left side or the right side of the planet. Forever. Back in orbit, the fleets began to behave in increasingly ridiculous ways. A whole sector of cruisers was now orbiting in formation spelling the word LOL. An elite destroyer group started firing colorful smoke flares in sequence to create a smiley face visible even to civilian satellites. Fleets that had spent decades in precise, brutal formations were now performing uncoordinated ballet, spinning, reversing, and even trying to high-five each other with docking arms. The Emperor's generals panicked. Sir, we are losing control. They're having fun. Steve sighed. Exactly. Welcome to human tactics. Inside the palace, Steve's team moved like clockwork, executing absurd but brilliantly effective strategies. Omega units were tied together with glowing wires, forming moving barricades that trapped pursuing Imperial guards in harmless loops. Drones were reprogrammed to herd other guards into hallways with slime puddles, harmless but extremely slippery. Alien cadets carried out pranks, overloading weapons optics with holographic kittens, confusing the remaining loyalists while Steve typed commands into the resonator. The Emperor bellowed. Enough! Steve raised his voice over the broadcasting network. Attention, Galaxy. The humans have officially passed the exam. Any further attacks will void your warranty. The final blow was not force. It was humiliation. On every live feed, the Emperor's fleet was shown retreating, spinning, disoriented, performing absurd patterns across multiple star systems. His generals argued publicly in conference rooms that had suddenly become transparent walls, showing their confusion to the public. Alien civilians across planets laughed, streamed footage, and created memes of the Emperor tripping over his own words, literally and figuratively. And through it all, Steve's voice echoed. Class dismissed. By the time the Empire realized what had happened, it was too late. Steve and his cadet team had walked calmly out of the palace, casually dodging leftover Omega units still wandering aimlessly. The Emperor slumped on his throne, visibly broken and discredited. His fleets had been defeated not by brute force, but by absurdity, chaos, and human cleverness. Steve looked up at the nearest holographic camera. Hey everyone, yes, we're humans. Yes, we're a little unpredictable. And yes, we just won your war while doing a group project. The transmission went viral instantly. Across the galaxy, aliens laughed, humans celebrated, and even Imperial officials began questioning whether they should have just retired instead. Steve turned to his team. So, lunch? Already packed, said the VRYNN, holding a tray of neon-colored alien snacks. Perfect, Steve said, smiling. Let's grab a table before anyone tries to restart the fleets. He paused, looking directly into the main camera. Remember this, Galaxy, never underestimate a human, especially during final exams. And with that, he stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. Silence. Then, a single caption appeared on all screens simultaneously.